Good evening, 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Welcome to Channel 2's news. I'm Yasmin Bakir, and here's a look at the main headlines. Egypt's parliament speaker stresses on the importance of having a unified front to counter threats facing Egypt. Egypt's permanent UN ambassador addresses the UN Security Council meeting on Syria. And UK's Prime Minister says that Britain will give the EU new proposal for a Brexit deal shortly. Welcome back. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Dr. Ali Abdel Al, has stressed that the importance of having a unified internal front to counter all kinds of threats facing Egypt. Addressing the fifth regular session, Abdel Al voiced appreciation for the national role played by the military and police to protect the country and reiterated the House of Representatives' support for the leadership. Abdel Al also said that the Parliament in its fifth session will follow up with the government on efforts to preserve the people's interests, adding that the Parliament will always remain a platform of dialogue for the majority, minority and independent members. Saudi Arabia on Tuesday renewed its support for Egypt in its war against terrorism. The Saudi cabinet at a meeting under King Salman bin Abdulaziz expressed support for measures adopted by the Egyptian army and police in North Sinai for uprooting terrorism. The Saudi cabinet also reviewed the recent developments at the Arab, regional and international levels. Egypt called for procedures to be taken against the parties and governments that support terrorist organizations in Syria, whether by providing them finances or arms or by offering them political coverage. This came in a statement read out by Egypt's permanent UN ambassador Mohammed Idris at the UN Security Council meeting on Syria. The ambassador voiced Egypt's support to the agreement on forming a Syrian constitutional committee as a landmark achievement towards both ending the suffering of the Syrian people and reaching a political settlement to the prolonged crises. The statement stressed the head for serious collective procedures in fighting terrorism and militant illegal groups in Syria to prevent the possible spreading outside the Middle East state.
إن مصر تخوض يوميا حربا ضروسا ضد التنظيمات الإرهابية في شمال سيناء حيث يتم استئصال الإرهاب بأقل خسائر ممكنة. إن معركتنا هي جزء من الحرب العالمية ضد الإرهاب وحريصون على مد يد العون والشراكة لكل حلفائنا في المعركة. المواجهة الشاملة تعني بالضرورة مواجهة كافة أبعاد ظاهرة الإرهاب فيما يتصل بالتمويل والتسليح والدعم السياسي والأيديولوجي، فالإرهابي ليس فقط من يحمل السلاح. الولايات المتحدة قادرة على المساهمة في إحداث النقلة النوعية المطلوبة دوليا، بحيث يتم صياغة خطة عمل واضحة بإطار زمني محدد تبتث الإرهاب من جذوره تمويلا وتسليحا.
A bomb blast Tuesday near a key oil field in eastern Syria targeted Syrian Democratic Forces but killed 3 workers instead. The Syrian Observatory said the explosion occurred on the road outside of Al Omar oil field, the country's largest in the eastern province of Deir Zor. There was no immediate claim for the blast, but Daesh terrorist group often claims it is responsible for deadly attacks in the area. Israeli occupation forces in the occupied West Bank today continued the closure of the Hebron-based Al Ibrahimi Mosque, preventing worshippers from prayers allegedly to observe Jewish holidays. Earlier, Israel forced a complete shutdown of the occupied Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, citing the same complex in Jerusalem's military checkpoints and security patrols. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the Russian President Vladimir Putin plans to discuss a nuclear Iran deal and the situation in the Strait of Hormuz with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani at their bilateral meeting in Armenia on Tuesday. Al-Shabaab terrorist group claimed responsibility for an attack on U.S. base in Somalia as the European Union confirmed a separate strike against a convoy of Italian advisors. The raid on the base prompted a counterattack by U.S. forces who staged 2 airstrikes and used small arms fires targeting Al-Shabaab terrorists, where 10 terrorists died and a vehicle was destroyed. The militants struck the U.S. base about 100 kilometers northwest of the capital of Mogadishu with explosives before gunmen opened on the compound. Peru's president dissolved parliament and called for fresh elections, prompting a vote by lawmakers to suspend him, depending on a long-running institutional crisis. The announcement by President Martin Vizcarra came after he warned the Congress that he would dissolve the body if it continued to block a raft of anti-corruption reforms and changes at the way judges are appointed to the country's Supreme Court. Shortly after his televised statement, 86 of Congress' 130 members have voted to suspend Vizcarra for 1 year on the grounds of moral incapacity and nominated Vice President Mercedes Arauz as acting head of state. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Tuesday Britain will give the EU new proposals for a Brexit deal shortly, but rejected reports it would see customs posts along the Irish border. Here's the story with Abir Hussain.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Tuesday that Britain is due to present the European Union with proposals for an amended Brexit agreement later this week. Speaking to BBC television from Manchester, where his Conservative Party's conference is underway, Johnson said the proposals include ideas to replace the contested backstop insurance policy to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland that Britain previously signed up to. With 30 days to go until Britain is due to leave the European Union on October the 31st, Johnson is racing for an agreement to avoid yet another delay. But the bloc's leaders have complained that they have yet to see a concrete alternative to the current divorce deal and time is running out. The most controversial element in a deal that was reached by former British government but rejected by British Parliament is the so-called backstop plan to keep Britain subject to EU customs rules to allow goods to flow freely between British Northern Ireland and EU member Ireland after Brexit. An Irish broadcaster reported late Monday that Britain has proposed erecting customs clearance sites along with both sides of the border, but located 5 to 10 miles away to keep the actual frontier open. But Ireland says there cannot be a return to the border infrastructure of the past, warning it could upset the peace process in Northern Ireland. Johnson has struggled off the report while declining to give details. However, media reports said the new ideas could be proposed as early as Thursday.
China's military on Tuesday had showed off new equipment at a parade in central Beijing to mark 70 years since the founding of the People's Republic. In a speech at the start of the nearly 3 hours, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that his country would stay on a path of peaceful development, but that the military would resolutely safeguard the country's sovereignty and security. China says the parade of the country's most important political event of the year, which featured more than 15,000 troops marching through parts of the square as jet fighters trailing colored smoke soared overhead, is not meant to intimidate any specific country. Hopes were fading late Tuesday for 6 missing people believed to be trapped when a bridge in Taiwan collapsed onto a group of fishing boats moored underneath. At least 12 people were injured, including 6 Filipinos and 3 Indonesians fishing workers, the Taiwanese driver of the petrol tanker, and 2 Coast Guard personnel. Officials have launched a rescue operation after the collapse and were later informed that 6 foreign workers were also unaccounted for and might be trapped on the boats underneath the collapsed structure. One badly damaged boat was also pulled out from another understructure on Tuesday afternoon, but 2 more remain stuck with the tide rising. Welcome back to the business news. The Ministry of Supply announced on Tuesday that it continues to receive complaints from citizens who were lifted from the lists of the ration cards. The ministry said that 1.8 million people were returned to the list upon the directions of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The ministry did say that the flotation of the lists of citizens receiving subsidized food is done according to social justice indicators. The statement added that citizens were restored to the list when proven to have the right to receive the subsidized food rations. The ministry has called on citizens who have been wrongfully excluded from the ration card program to submit an official complaint and vowed that they would be re-entered into the program. The central bank governor affirmed that Egypt's deserts face any problem in paying off its debts and external dues. He said that the dues are being paid back on time, noting that the Egyptian economy has become capable of yielding resources that can secure the foreign currency. The central governor remarks came during an international conference that currently is taking place in Dubai. Egypt's stock indices collectively surged on Tuesday, boosted by purchasing operations by foreign and Arab corporations, while local investors have been going into selling operations. Capital market for companies listed in the bourses against £1.7 billion to end the deal at £723.3 billion. The benchmark EGX 30 index added about 1.68%, reaching 14,496.84 points. Meanwhile, the EGX 70 index for small and medium shares had also been up 1.35%, reaching 527.43 points, while the broader EGX 100 index surged up by 1.66% to reach at 1414.61 respectively. Lebanon's central bank is to facilitate access to dollars for the importers of petroleum products, wheat and medicine, following fears of a dollar shortage and a possible currency devaluation. Local media said last week banks and money exchange shops were rotating the dollar sales in the country, where the Lebanese pounds and the US dollars are used interchangeably in everyday transactions. The central bank adopted the measure to allow certain importers to obtain dollars at the bank rate to pay for key imports.